Okay. Hello, everybody. Let me just get to my channel and check your guys' comments. Where is it? My channel. Alright. So, we got Moonzer, Isaiah, Tyler. We have Steve from the Blue Ribband. Let me open this window a little bit because it's ever so slightly warm in here. We have Kevin, Alex in the seaside of Bulgaria, Moonzer, Cryoman. Let's see, Mike. Hello, Mike. Hello, Tyler. Okay, so I think that's everybody for the... Oh, nope, the chat's not keeping up. There we go. All right, hello, Nomadic. All right, so it's good to be back. Sorry, I'm just like making sure everything is running properly. So, but yeah, it looks fine. So I am kind of... Hope that is okay. Alright. Yeah, whatever. So let's see, who else is here? We got Historic Productions. Hey Alex, finally made my first YouTube video. It's about on a Sea of Glass book review. Nice. Ken says, I went to the Queen Mary last Friday. Best improvement was the morale and passion of the employees and guides. You really felt a sense of pride and excitement that it's getting the attention it deserves. That's really good, yeah, because that's one of the biggest things is that there was kind of this low morale over the fact that, you know, the ship just really wasn't getting the attention it needed, and, you know, so it's actually kind of nice to know that now the ship is about to reopen. There's so much work going on. And yeah, you know, even my friend was telling me that, you know, the employees, you can definitely tell how proud they are of it. So, you know, I think it's definitely, you know, been for the better, you know, most certainly. So, Moonzer says, hello, Alex. The subs... Wait. Oh, the substitute teacher was at the Queen Mary 1985, and she saw the spruce goose. Nice. Yeah, we have that near here in McMinnville, Oregon, and the spruce goose was really fun to see. I've been there twice already, and I can definitely see myself going back again this year sometime. I'll probably go there every year, at least twice, I think. It's just so fun. Alex says, what's the weather like today? You know, today we've been having rain off and on. Right now it's sunny. Like, you would never have guessed it rained really hard this morning. But, yeah, it's sunny. But there's heavy clouds in the distance, so it might start raining again. Sorry, my collar is really bothering me. Cryoman says, I'll be going to the Queen Mary during summer. Nice. Hello, little gamer. Nomadic says, just started reading The Only Way to Cross. It's a pretty good book. Just keep in mind it was written a very long time ago, so there's a lot of information about, specifically about Titanic, that has definitely been... What's the word I'm looking for? They've found more accurate information since then. So there's a few things in the book about Titanic that I was like reading, I'm like, that's not right. Like, there was no mention of the ship breaking in half, and that's because, you know, when he wrote the book, no one had really generally accepted that the ship broke in half. It was, at the time, generally accepted that it sank all in one piece. So there's things like that, but yeah, otherwise it's a really good book. Ron says, saw a picture of the third funnel looking like it was getting painted. Nice. I wasn't aware they already started that, but yeah, if they did, that's good, because, you know, May 12th is approaching, and May 12th, I'm pretty sure, will probably be when the ship officially reopens to general admission. So, yeah, they're going to need to have a lot of stuff ready by May 12th. Rail Enthusiast says, Titanic must have been badly built following the disaster that happened to the vessel 111 years ago. No, the Titanic was one of the strongest ships ever built. But I mean, you know, no ship can withstand everything. I mean, they couldn't have foreseen that it would get struck by, you know, that they would strike an iceberg and the ship would, you know, start to sink and half the ship would come out of the water and break in half as a result. Like, you can't predict that kind of thing. Like, it's just an accident, you know, like, so it was very, very well built, a very well built ship, very strong. It's just, you know, you can't build everything to withstand everything. It's like building a house and then it gets hit by, you know, an asteroid or a meteor that comes down. And then 50 years later, people are like, oh, well, they should have built the house stronger. It's like you couldn't have foreseen the house getting hit by a meteor, you know. So, yeah, it's one of those things. Moonzer says, my cousin on my dad's side lives in LA, and he says he sees the Queen Mary all the time when he goes to Long Beach. Nice. Historic Production says, Titanic was built like a warship. I wouldn't say a warship. I mean, a warship was definitely built much stronger than Titanic. It was built like a strong ocean liner, and that's, you know, definitely stronger than a cruise ship, that's for sure. Moonzer asked, did Carpathia have any sister ships? I don't know. I'm the wrong person to ask about that. Kevin says, what's on the menu today? You know, I went to the store to try to get ingredients for a cucumber sandwich. They're just not in season, so I can't get dill or anything like that. It's just not in season. So instead of a sandwich, it's going to be, once again, chocolate chip cookies and McVitie's. So I'm probably not going to make any Scottish shortbread until after I move to my new apartment. So, and to be honest, this may be the last tea time for the next 2 weeks or so. I might do one more on Wednesday, maybe, if I haven't already packed everything up yet. So this may possibly be the last tea time. I'm sorry, not Wednesday, Sunday, I mean. So this may be the last tea time, unless I do one on Sunday, if I still have everything out and everything, prepared. So, Alex says, speaking of Titanic, it's just hard to imagine if things went another way around. So many things could have been done different. I think it's not even fair to speculate. What's your opinion? I mean, speculation is always okay. What I don't like is when people are like, oh, the Titanic should have done this. And it's when they say should, or it's when they say if they had only, it's those things kind of do irk me because, hindsight is 20/20. People forget that. They read about these things in hindsight and they go, why didn't they just do this or that? And you're like, well, because they didn't know how it was going to turn out. There's some things you can't see how bad it's going to be until it's already done, So that's the thing is, like, there are people that are like, oh, like, if only they had just turned quicker or something, or not stopped the engines, because the engines did not go in reverse. They stopped, just in case you're wondering. If only they had not stopped the engines. Like, yeah, if only. If, it's shoulda, coulda, woulda. But there's really nothing you can do about it. It happened a long time ago, and now we know a lot more about what happened that night. And so, yeah, it's easy for us to go back and go, well, if they had only just done that. But there was no way in that time you could have really known all the right things to do. I think they did their best with Titanic, and that's all really you can ask out of them. So that's kind of my thing. But I mean, if people want to speculate and go, oh, well, had this happened and had this happened, then the ship probably would have still been around. That's like, okay, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. It's just the people that say, like, why didn't they just? And I'm like, you can't predict it. All right. Ugh. All right. Dump out half of that. A little bit more. Alright, we'll let that preheat. Matthew says, I thought you had a tea cake there. I wish I did. I really wish I did. James says, hey Alex, finally I'm here when you're streaming. Well, welcome. Artupia says, I wonder how modern cruise ships would have dealt with a Titanic-like situation. I think the cruise ship probably would have gone down more catastrophically, to be totally honest. Yeah. Isaiah says, plans for summer this year. No particular plans. No trips, nothing. Nothing planned. Matthew says, do you like the Queen Mary too? I most certainly do. It's on my top 10 favorite ships. Rail Enthusiast says, the Cunard line has got a new ship coming soon, aka the Queen Anne. Very exciting. I myself am not that excited about it. I don't really like it that much, but, you know, I'm not going to knock anybody who likes cruise ships and stuff. Yeah, there's also this big thing about Titanic's rudder not being big enough, but there is a ratio of rudder size to ship size. And I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but Titanic's rudder was plenty large enough. I mean, it's one of those things, once again, that these things about, like, oh, the rudder, if only it was bigger, or Titanic's rudder was small, that's one of those hindsight things where you're like, yeah. It's like if a car were to try to avoid getting in a crash, the driver turns the wheel, and then the car gets in a crash. Next thing you know, you have people saying, well, if only the wheels had a tighter turn radius, if only, turning the steering wheel was much easier. It's one of those things where it's like people use hindsight to say that there was a problem to begin with. Titanic didn't have a problem with steering at all. The rudder was more than adequate for steering the ship, and the Titanic actually passed her sea trials, with flying colors. She actually was a very maneuverable ship. It's, once again, it's just hindsight. People going, oh, well, the rudder was too small to get the ship to go around. That's like saying, oh, well, you could have avoided that car wreck if your wheels had a tighter turn radius. And it's just like, that doesn't really make it that your wheels don't have a tight enough turn radius, So it's one of those things. Hello, Doc. How's it going? Moonzer, Queen Anne is not finished yet. I think they just recently added the funnel on the ship. I think they just did it like the other day or something like that. Moonzer asks, does anyone know what the RMS Parthia is? I think I've heard the name, but I don't know for certain. Oh, my chat must have jumped a little bit, because I'm realizing there's a bunch of messages I didn't even read. Steve says, people of Belfast and the people who worked for Harlan and Wolff are very proud of building Titanic even today. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they certainly are. And yeah, and Steve's right. She was not a disaster construction-wise. She was really a top-of-the-line ship. Maybe not the fastest ship that ever existed, you know, but she was a top-of-the-line ship built very well, very strong. It's just that, you know, circumstances beyond, you know, human control just led the ship to, you know, foundering so catastrophically. Hello, Mark. How's it going? Yeah, James says, it's like people who say, well, if they had just stopped for the night, okay, well, they didn't know they were going to come in such close proximity to an iceberg, nor did they expect things to go so badly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, and ocean liners, they don't usually just stop in the middle of a voyage, you know. I think one of them, I forget which ship had to stop because they ran into a field of ice, but I mean, you know, it's just one of those things that people just, they see everything in hindsight and they go, look at all these things that they could have done, and it's like, yeah, you know now because you know the whole situation. You're outside of the situation, you've seen all the details, but they were there on the open ocean. You know, there wasn't too much that they could have seen in the darkness. Rightopia says, I don't think the top priority in an ocean liner was turning circle. It wasn't a top priority, but in order for a ship to pass its sea trials, it did have to be able to turn within a certain turning radius. And that's true for ships today. The planning commissions and all that, they have an idea of how sharp a ship must turn depending on its size. And so they do test ships even to this day for their turning radius. And a lot of ships come in underneath that radius. So they're more than adequate for turning. Alex in Seaside of Bulgaria says, did you know that Titanic had only a double bottom, while the Lusitania Mauretania had a complete double hull, despite being built earlier? It's just interesting, although at least I know why. Yeah, I've discussed that a few times on my channel. But what I have learned since then was that, you know, Lusitania and Mauretania were built to British Admiralty standards, so they were required to have a double hull as opposed to Titanic's double bottom keel. But Titanic had a standard, you know, hull design of its era. Let me go ahead and bring this back up to a boil, because then we're going to start brewing. Pneumatic says SS Californian had to stop. Yeah, that's the one that ran into sea ice. So they had to stop. But yeah, normally ocean liners don't stop. Munzer says, is this Cunard's first Queen Anne? Yes, indeed it is Cunard's first Queen Anne. Okay, and then this one gets dumped all the way out. Okay. And then the T. So today's tea, for those that are wondering, 423. So today's tea, for those that are wondering, is English breakfast tea. Doc says, today my son and I played on the Jose Gasparilla. It's a pirate ship we keep docked here in Tampa. Thought of you. Certainly no ocean liner. Nice. Thank you, Goofy Rolls. Goofy Rolls says, don't forget to hit that like button. Rail Enthusiast says, the Queen Mary must have been one of the best Cunard ships in the 1930s. It was the best Cunard ship in the 1930s. Most certainly. You know, the Queen Mary was the top of the line when it came to Cunard ships in the 1930s. So, yeah. Even though they made a few ships that came after, such as the Mauretania, well, the second Mauretania, I should say, but, you know, but, yeah. Queen Mary was the best Cunarder. Alex says it's nice that these days ships are much safer than in the beginning of the previous century. Although if there's something really serious, sometimes still nothing could be done. Yeah, ships today are much safer. I think the safest thing that ever happened to ships was the upgrades to the navigation systems. That has helped a lot, you know, especially the Doppler radars and stuff like that. You know, being able to predict the weather before you go out, because, you know, at the time, you know, even when Queen Mary, or when even as far back as when Titanic would go out, you know, they could kind of gauge what the weather might be like, but there was no way to fully know until you were out there. But now we have these Doppler radars and stuff, and we can already tell, like, where a storm is, how intense it is, and if the ocean liner will run into it on the voyage. And then from there, the captain and the navigators can decide what to do if they want to try to steer around it or something. It's raining again. Steve says, I was kind of hoping Cunard would go with a more traditional name like Mauretania or Caronia, but it is what it is. Yeah, you know, I was thinking that for the next queen ship, because I knew it was going to be a queen, before they named it Queen Anne, I honestly thought they were going to name it Queen Alexandra, because that was the only other, you know, British queen in the 20th century. You know, they already had Queen Victoria, and, you know, Queen Victoria lived till 1901. You know, and then came Queen Alexandra, and then there was Queen Mary, and then Queen Elizabeth, and Queen Elizabeth II, although... No, I think the third QE ship, the one that currently exists, is named after Queen Elizabeth II. So yeah, you know, I honestly thought they were going to go with Queen Alexandra, but they just skipped right over her and went all the way back to Queen Anne. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I mean, it's not uncalled for, but it was just interesting. So Doc, links and stuff to images don't show up in the chat, just in case you don't know. Because I think you tried to post an image, but nothing else posted with your message, so... Moonzer says, Alex, did you know that RMS Caronia went to Brazil in the 1950s? No, I didn't know that. Was it there to transport people, or was it there because it was purchased? Or I'm not really sure the circumstances behind why it was there. Okay, so I think it's time. It's really hot. Carter Asher says Alex did the Twin Towers were in New York in 1936 when Queen Mary entered New York on her maiden voyage. No, the Twin Towers were built in the early 1970s. So, I want to say 1972, but I'm not really sure. Okay, give that a quick little stir. Alright. The lid goes back on. Can dump this out. Ooh, that lid is so hot. Ah. Okay. Moonzer says, is there an RMS Queen Victoria from the 1930s? Because I know there is a cruise ship version of Queen Victoria. I'm not aware of any RMS Queen Victoria ocean liner. So, yeah, I don't think there ever was. At least it wasn't Cunard. Cunard had only, in the 20th century, built Queen Mary, Queen Elizabeth, and the QE2. Those were the only queen ships of the 20th century. And as far as I know, before that, there were no queen ships from Cunard. They were just, other names and stuff. Alright, so... But, I mean, that's what made the Queen Mary such a beloved ship, or at least part of it, is because really nobody expected Cunard to come up with, a ship and name it after a queen. They just didn't expect it, Alright. Matthew says, was Queen Alexandra known as a queen or queen consort? She was definitely a queen consort. She wasn't the monarch. But, see, I know when Queen Camilla, after King Charles's coronation, I don't know that she will be considered a queen consort anymore. I think she will just be referred to as queen. If that's how it works, then it's possible Queen Alexandra wasn't just the queen consort, she was just the queen. But she was not the monarch, that's for sure. Steve, I think your question to me might be a trick question. Because if it was a ship named after a queen, I'm not sure that Cunard had one. At least not after a British queen. But I don't know. As far as I'm aware, Queen Mary was the first ship named after a British queen from the Cunard Company. Dino says, sorry I was late joining. I saw a couple of extra patients at my clinic today and the charting was complicated. I see. Doc says, sorry about the link. I was also asking if the British royal family has a current yacht. Did they replace Britannia? No, they never replaced Britannia. The public was very much against it. They felt that a lot of people really just didn't know what the yacht was for. They didn't, even to this day, most people don't realize that the yacht wasn't necessarily a party boat. It was meant for very important, you know, relations with other countries and stuff like that. So the public was very much against the Queen Elizabeth II building another yacht. So they never did. They permanently retired it and never built another one again. Alex in the seaside of Bulgaria says, do you know how many four-funneled ships were built in total? No, I'm not aware of how many there were in total. Steve says, RMS Berengaria. Berengaria was of Navarre, wife of King Richard I. Interesting. I have heard of Berengaria, the RMS Berengaria. Rail Enthusiast says, it's sad watching the Mauretania get scrapped in 1935. Do you think she could have been preserved? No, I don't think so. You know, the thing is back then, there was no reason to preserve a ship. You know, today, when we look at ocean liners that are going out of commission, I'm trying to think of one. I can't think of one off the top of my head. But when we look at ocean liners that go out of commission, like the QE2, you know, we think of preservation because they're old, they're traditional, you know, ocean liners don't exist anymore kind of thing. So it's, you know, it's kind of like that is the reason why we preserve them. But back then, ocean liners were a dime a dozen. They were building new ones every single day. So, you know, Mauretania getting scrapped was because they were, you know, building the Queen Mary. There was really no need for the old Mauretania. So nobody thought of it in terms of, oh, let's preserve this ship. They thought of it as, get rid of that old thing, you know? Like, of course, there were people who still loved the ship, but they acknowledged that there was really no reason to keep them around. Now there is a reason to keep them around, for heritage. But, you know, back then, it was like another one was being built. You didn't need it, you know? So Matthew says, I'm pretty sure Camilla is being titled as Queen Consort. I know she is currently. She is currently Queen Consort. But I was reading an article, and it said, once King Charles III is crowned, Camilla will no longer be Queen Consort. So I didn't read the full article. I didn't have time. But I don't know if that's how it works. Like, when they marry, do they stop becoming the Queen Consort and just become the Queen? Of course, I don't mean monarch. I just mean the Queen, you know. But I don't know. Pelly says, at the time, the royal yacht was also considered as a means of escape for the sovereign and royal family in case of a nuclear war. Yeah, and I heard that when they were preparing the Royal Yacht Britannia for display, they were kind of going through all the rooms, and they discovered a secret room which had like equipment and stuff for basically allowing the British government to be run from the Royal Yacht Britannia. So, you know, and they even had like buttons to like their various missiles and things like that. Not on the ship, I mean just in Britain. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Pele says, before or after the coronation, Camilla will remain queen consort as Queen Mary was. There is no real convention on this. It is up to the king whether he wants to change her title. Oh, I see. Daniel says, hey, Alex, do you like any kind of geared steam locomotives? They're not on my list of favorites or anything, but, I mean, I do think that Shays are pretty interesting to look at. Climaxes are pretty interesting to look at. I'm not really a big fan of the Heislers, but, yeah, Shays and Climaxes are pretty interesting to look at. But they're not on my list of favorite locomotives, you know, so, but that's about it. Alright, let's try some of this tea. And to Carter Asher, you've been asking that same question for several different tea times, and the only answer I have for you is please stick to questions that relate to the channel. So I try not to talk about subjects that have nothing to do with the channel at all. So all right, let's try this. I've never dipped my cookie in tea before. It's okay. Boy, you know, the chat is really slow today. A lot of times I can't catch up with it. Goofy says, what's the next step on your train layout? It's pretty cool. So, the next step on the train layout is I need to get the mountain finished with its plaster work. There's more rock work to attach to the mountain, and then once the rock work is attached, I need to go over some of the areas in between the rock work with a type of plaster that I bought that is really rough textured, and it's designed to look like landscape. So I'm going to go over the smooth areas with that rough texture. Once that's done, it's got to be painted. And I mean, like, fully, like, the mountain has to be fully painted. The track areas around the mountain, actually all the track around the entire layout, will need to have any missing ties or sleepers, depending on if you're from the UK or not. Ties or sleepers must be put in between missing areas of the track that don't have ties and sleepers, such as joints and things like that. And then the track will all need to be ballasted. Actually, no, I need to paint before I ballast. So I have to paint all the landscape of the entire layout with at least a base color, at the very least. And then I need to ballast the track. And then I can start applying other layers of paint to the rest of the landscape. But yeah, that's the steps I want to get to next. It's easier said than done, but because I'm moving, I won't be able to work on the train layout for the next couple of weeks at least. So everything's going to be packed away. Like I was saying at the beginning of the live stream, this may be the last tea time live stream I do until I move. K4RNA says, just got back from Chicago, was down at the Navy Pier, and saw a bunch of great sailing ships. Very cool. Nice. In Chicago, really? I guess there is one of the Great Lakes next to Chicago, so... But I was kind of like, Chicago's in the middle of the U.S. I'm like... But I guess they did use sailing ships to get across the lakes. Lachlan says, my grandfather told me when he was coming to Australia on the Moreton Bay, they went through Suez and the canal, and the sister ship, Largs Bay, was stuck with half a mile of cable around the propellers. Jeez. Wow, that's crazy. Aiden says, Alex, have you heard of the SS Richard Montgomery? It was an American Liberty cargo ship that sank in the River Thames in World War II and is still over 1,500 tons of explosives still on board. You know, I heard about something. I didn't know it was called SS Richard Montgomery, but I did hear about a World War II era ship that sank near the mouth of the Thames with 500 tons of explosives. I had heard about that. Moonzer says, me and my mom were worried this was your last live stream. No, it's just the last tea time until I move. But there will be other live streams. I might do like Titanic, Honor and Glory. I might do Disneyland Railroad. I might just do like a Queen Mary Q&A, live stream or something like that, But this might be the last tea. I say might because I might do it on Sunday. If I have everything still out. It all depends if I have the stuff still out. But it might be the last tea time live stream till I move. And then after that, you'll see a whole different apartment behind me. So... Doc says, Alex, are you still planning on doing the resin for the train setup? I mean, obviously after you move. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the river and the waterfalls and all that will get the resin treatment. But that's like one of the last things you do on a layout. One of the very last things you do. Because everything else needs to be done first, or else you might get the resin dirty or something like that, or paint on it and stuff like that. But yeah, it's pretty much the last thing, so it probably won't get resin for a couple of years. So, might be a while. See you later, Matthew. Have a good night. Lachlan says, I went to the Maritime Museum in Sydney last week. It was among... They have Captain Cook's sailing ship replica and a warship called HMS Vampire. Oh, wow. They also have a submarine and smaller vessels. Nice. Oh, I'd never heard of... What Maritime Museum was... It's in Sydney. Okay, I see. Maybe one day I'll visit Sydney. There's a few things I want to see. Carter, I've heard of the Edmund Fitzgerald. It was a... What was it? Was it a warship? Pally says, Alex, if you're interested in the monarchy, a great book to read is The Canadian Kingdom. It will give you a good understanding specifically on the cultural and constitutional roles outside the UK. Interesting. I'll write that down. The Canadian Kingdom. Let's see. Ah. Type this down. There we go. Thank you. Alex says, so will you be able to release your video about the QE? I'm looking forward to it. That's why I'm curious. Yes, I have been hard at work. Ever since I posted my Queen Mary update, I have been working every single day on the QE video. And so I had a major delay yesterday because I was working on a lot of the video. And right as I was working on the video, my computer suddenly shut down and restarted randomly. That's never happened to my computer before. Never. And it suddenly shut down and restarted. And I had lost about 3 hours worth of work. 3 hours of work had been completely lost. I had to redo it. And I was pretty peeved. But I kept working last night, and I got all 3 hours back. I put it all back together. It took about 2 hours to get that work back. Thankfully, it's because I've already done the work, so I remembered where everything was and how it was supposed to be placed. So I got it done in 2 hours as opposed to another 3. And then just before the live stream, I was working on the QE video again. I had done about couple hours of that work, and then yeah, so I am trying as hard as I can to get the video out to you guys on Friday. It might come out on Saturday depending on how much time it takes. It looks like it's going to take a lot of time, but I know I have to get it out on Friday or Saturday because I'm going to be moving. I won't have time next week to work on very many videos, so I know that if I don't get it done this week, it's not going to get done next week. So I've been working really hard to get the video out. Oh, hang in there, Tyler. But you do what is best for you. Carter says, are you going to move out, Alex? Yes. So I am getting an apartment with my father. I signed a lease and everything for one. And it's going to be a much larger apartment. So that way there's plenty of room for both, him and myself. And he's going to be starting a YouTube channel of his own all about his favorite movies and shows and things like that. So he needs space to be able to, work on stuff and all that. So, yeah. It has definitely been very stressing preparing to move. I'm not usually stressed when I move. I'm a little bit stressed, because moving is a stressful situation. But I've never rented a 3-bedroom apartment before. I've only had, studio apartments to myself. So, I don't know. It's a different kind of thing. It's just a lot. It's a lot on my plate. So... Oh, Edmund Fitzgerald was an ore carrier on the Great Lakes. Okay, that makes sense. That's why I've heard of it, because I have a friend on Facebook who loves Great Lakes ships, and he talks to me about Great Lakes ships all the time, and I'm like, I feel like I've heard of the Edmund Fitzgerald. I'm pretty sure he's told me about the Edmund Fitzgerald. Curly Q says, completely destroyed my old layout with resin once because it didn't cure properly. The resin leaked all over it and onto my carpet. Oh, man. Yeah, see, that's one of the things I'm worried about is, you know, you got instructions on paper telling you how to do it, but sometimes things just don't go right. I've done stuff with resin before, and if the temperature is not perfect in your apartment, the resin won't cure properly. Or if you have the tiniest little opening or hole where you've poured the resin, it will leak out because it's self-leveling, so it'll just leak right out. And yeah, oh man, that's one of my biggest fears, is what I'm going to do when the day comes when I need to put resin on the layout. Man. Alex in the Seaside of Bulgaria says, did you like ships before getting interested in the Queen Mary and other ocean liners? Personally, I did. I was always interested in the sea. My grandfather was a captain. Maybe that's why. No, before I learned about the RMS Queen Mary, I was not interested in ships at all. So I had known about the Titanic. I'd never done any research on it, but I had known about Titanic and stuff like that, and I liked the movie. That's about the extent of it. But I had no interest in ships at all, none whatsoever. Even now, I'm very hesitant to say that I'm into ships, because I'm only into certain ships. And it's the same thing with my other interests. Like, you know, I like trains, I like steam railroads, but I'm only interested in certain trains, certain locomotives. So, you know, I'm not interested in all of it, you know, and so it becomes kind of hard to describe to people, because I'm just very specific about the things that I like. And so I'm not really into ships. I'm specifically into ocean liners built between, you know, the 1880s and the 1930s. So, and even then, not all of them. British liners, mainly. That's honestly, you know, I don't like the U.S. liners. I don't like that many German liners or French liners. I probably like more French liners than I like German liners, but still, yeah, I'm a bit weird that way. You know, I do have interests. I have a little bit of interest in a bunch of different subjects, but very select interests in each. So, Daniel says, so, wait, so are the Cunard cruise ships getting thicker hulls? You know, the simple answer is no. Technically, they're not getting thicker hulls. They're cruise ships. They don't really need to have thicker hulls. But some people say that the very bow of the cruise ships are getting thicker steel plating. That might be true, but that doesn't make it anywhere near the quality of an ocean liner. So, you know, even if it was true, you know, to handle small bits of ice or maybe rougher, you know, rougher seas hitting the bow, that's about it. It doesn't make it the quality of an ocean liner. But I mean, you know, in short, I have heard rumor that the bows on the Cunard cruise ships have slightly thicker hulls. Rail Enthusiast says, what was the last White Star liner to sink? Oh, I do not know. If someone knows the answer, let us know in the chat. But I don't know what the last one to sink was. Hello, Ozzy. Weather's okay. It's rain off and on kind of thing. Nothing too bad. A little bit of wind. But I like, you know me, I like this kind of weather. I'm surprised that today I was able to get to the second cup of tea before the second hour started. And the tea is still warm, so I'm happy. Goofy Roll says, Windows 11 has known bugs where it does stuff like randomly shut down and restart itself after a while. I never had any problems with my machine until I went with Windows 11. Yeah, you know, so Windows 11 has been around for a while, and my computer was telling me, I had Windows 10, my computer was telling me, you can upgrade now for free. And for a while, my friend was kind of like, don't upgrade, it's, you know, it's terrible, you won't like it, and, just telling me just avoid it. And months later, one day I'm talking to him, and he happens to casually mention he has Windows 11. I'm like, wait a minute, you've been telling me not to use Windows 11 because it's told me it's terrible. And he's like, have I? I didn't know that. This is Chris, by the way, so if you guys know him, you know that he... every time I talk to him, he's like a completely different person. So I'm pretty sure he's got like some kind of multiple personality syndrome or something. But, yeah, so... So finally I'm like, okay, well, if you got it and you like it, then I'm going to get Windows 11 too. So I went and upgraded my computer to Windows 11. And this is the first time I ever had a problem. It just randomly shut down in the middle of work. And I was so mad. I was like, at least give me a warning. If it could give me a warning, like, impending shutdown in 15 seconds, I'd quickly save my work and let it shut down. It would be annoying, but I'd let it happen if it would just let me save my work first. But instead it just shut down in the middle of work. I was really, really mad. But at the same time, I'm usually very cautious because when I work on stuff, normally I hit the save button a lot just to make sure, But I haven't had a computer randomly shut down on me in like 6 years. So I thought those kind of issues were done with. So so I was being kind of cavalier with it and just, not hitting the save button at all for 3 hours straight. And, the next thing I know, the computer shuts down, I lose 3 hours of work. So, gosh. Moonzer says, Alex, what if they move the Queen Mary to New York City? First of all, I'm not really sure she'll even survive the trip. But if they manage to get her there, they're going to have a whole new set of problems to deal with. One, the cost of mooring her. Because where the Queen Mary sits right now, she doesn't have to pay mooring fees. She sits on the land she owns. So that already makes her a very unique ship in this world, in that she doesn't have to pay mooring fees or port fees or whatever. So they're going to have that problem to deal with. Then there's the weather. People misunderstand just how simple weather differences can really affect the longevity of a ship sitting at bay, So one of the reasons why Queen Mary has lasted this long despite the neglect she's faced over the last, 30, 40 years is because of the Southern California weather is so mild that it's actually prevented the ship from just completely rotting away entirely. But if it had been abandoned like that in New York, you would have bet within 5-10 years, the ship would have been a total goner. You couldn't have done anything. It would have been too expensive to fix anything. Look at the way SS United States looks right now. And SS United States is in Philadelphia, but, and the thing is if it wasn't for the fact that SS United States was built with so much aluminum and stainless steel and, other, like, really hardy materials, you bet that there would be such bad corrosion, it would just, sink right in its spot. So, but, yeah, Queen Mary, with all that wood, oh my gosh. With all that wood, she just wouldn't last in New York. Yeah, so I'm glad she's in Southern California for that reason. Oh, Steve's gonna get going. See you later, Steve. Doc says there's a great song about the Edmund Fitzgerald. Ask your dad. Alright. You know, I probably know about it. Like, I grew up listening to all the same music he does, so... But I'll ask him and I'll see if I know it. Real Enthusiast says, what would happen if Titanic sank and Carpathia didn't come? I would say then 100% of the survivors would probably be dead. Because it would have been another couple hours until the next ship could have shown up. And in that cold weather, I just don't see it, you know, happening. It was really cold and yeah. Doc says, I haven't worked with resin. Do you cure it just by air drying it, or is there a special light? So curious how much resin dries in a non-industrial setting. There's ways to make it go faster, but you know, frankly, the best method of letting resin cure is just letting it sit. Just leave it and don't touch it, don't bother it. That's the best way. But it does require certain temperatures, certain humidity. So curing resin in an air-conditioned controlled room is the best option. But yeah, there's ways to accelerate it. Like, there's certain resins you can buy that have like a UV curing method, so you just shine blacklight on it and it'll accelerate its curing process. But that's like certain resins. Like, if you want a resin that looks like water, it might be a certain mixture. But anyway, the point is that the best method is to just leave it. Just leave it, let it cure. So, yeah. Carter Asher. So the SS Poseidon Ballroom was not filmed on the Queen Mary. That's another common, you know, thing that people think is that it was filmed on the... It wasn't. So the SS Poseidon's Ballroom was 100% a movie set. Alex says, when and why did you decide to start a YouTube channel? I started the YouTube channel. Back then it was only Disney content. It was only about Disneyland. But I started it because it was 2016 and it was June. Well, I didn't start it in June. I started it a few months later, but in June my mother had died. And so I was really distraught. And at the time, I was in the process of opening my first business. So I was going to open a cafe. Me and my business partner were working on the plans and everything. And there was just a lot happening. And I was really stressed. And then at the time, my grandmother was also kind of on the way out the door. And so... I think it was August is when I started the channel to try to get my mind off of things. And soon after I started the channel in September, my grandmother died. And so the channel became my way of just doing something I liked to do to get my mind off of things, because we did open the business around the same time my grandmother died. And so there was just a lot on my plate all at once. I mean, I was running a business. I was, handling the kitchen because I was the chef, and then I had all these, family issues and stuff like that. So I needed some way to kind of do something I loved, and even though I was running a business and stuff, it's not as fun as it looks, if that makes any sense. Like, I wanted to be a chef and all that, and I had went to culinary school for it. I'd spent years in the cooking industry. But at the time, once I opened the new restaurant, I kind of realized, I'm like, this is not my dream job. It's something I do because I enjoy doing it, but it's not my dream job. And so I just started talking about Disneyland history on my channel because it made me feel better, and it was something I knew a lot about, and and so it just became my outlet for that. And in 2020, the pandemic had forced the closure of a lot of businesses. My business was still selling food, but just not at the rate we used to because people just weren't ordering, So we had to close the business. And I thought, what am I going to do? Like, my career is over. The pandemic will last God knows how long. And I remembered I still have this YouTube channel. And, and I thought, well, what am I going to do? Because I can't keep doing Disneyland history forever. It's okay, but it's not paying the bills. But then I thought, I did want to start up this thing with the Queen Mary and talk about the Queen Mary. And then it turned out the Queen Mary content was super popular, and I was actually able to monetize my channel and earn money off of it, and that became my new job. So it was almost like a blessing in disguise, this channel, because it started off as something that I did to take my mind off of life. But then it became my new career, and I enjoy doing what I do, talking about history, talking about ships, talking about, all these different things. I enjoy doing this a lot more than what I did before. It's still just as much work. I was telling my dad the other day, I get up in the morning, immediately get on the computer, start doing research or video editing or something, and I do that all through the day, sometimes until 9 p.m. And because I always cut off at 9 p.m. I'm like, 9 p.m., I have to slow down for the day or else I won't get the right amount of sleep. But yeah, sometimes it's like 10 hours a day of work. But it's, as tedious as it can be, and having your computer shut down after doing 3 hours of work, it's still fun. It's still really fun. I still get to talk about what I like to talk about. And and then I get to meet all these people and do these live streams and stuff where I get to talk to people that also are interested in the same things I'm interested in. So it's actually been a really big blessing, this channel, having it in my life. And even at the time when I needed it most, it was there, and people were there, When my business shut down, I had no money. I was a chef. I didn't earn a lot of money. I almost sometimes didn't even get paid. I had to pay my employees first, and whatever was left, if there was anything left, is what I would keep for myself, But yeah, so I was able to really have the help of this channel to keep me afloat, and yeah, now it's what I do, and I love it. I love what I do. Okay, let's see. Rightopia says Windows gets worse with every new iteration. XP was peak Windows. I liked Windows XP. That was a nice one. Goofy Roll says, on the good side, Alex, my computer will resume after 10 minutes or so with no loss of work. Oh, wow. Well, that's really lucky. Daniel says, Alex, this May or June, I'm going to the Roaring Camp Railroad in Santa Cruz and ride a 3-foot gauge steam locomotive. Nice. Do you know what kind of locomotive it is? Daniels. Thank you so much. Yeah, I wasn't, really very close to my mom growing up, so... I was very close to my dad and my dad's family, that's for sure. A-Class Production says, Alex's first video was Walt Disney and audio animatronics. Was it? What was my first video? I wonder if I can look it up. Hold on. I am curious to know what my first video was. I don't remember it being Walt Disney and audio animatronics. Content. Sort by. Oh, no. Do I have to go all the way to the bottom of the list? We're talking like thousands of videos here. Let's see. I still have a lot of the original videos on my channel, so... Good golly. Wow, I still have that video on the channel? Jeez, I thought I removed that one. Ooh, how long ago was that? There's all my vlogs. My gosh, there is a lot of Disneyland vlogs. Had to take those off of public view because of the threats I was getting. My poor friends were caught right in the middle of all of that. They had nothing to do with it, but yet people were just making threats against me and them. Jeez. Wow, there's a lot of vlogs. Oh, that's interesting. What is this one? So, there we are. Almost, I forgot they're labeled. Where's episode 1? That's episode 2. I forgot that they're out of order because this might be... Yeah, the history of audio... Disneyland, the history of audio animatronics was episode 9, so it certainly wasn't the first. 5... I've gone down... So they're out of order, so I'm just kind of like looking at them. 5... 3 is Pirates of the Caribbean. 2 is Disneyland Railroad. I don't know. I don't. If I remember correctly, episode 1, which I don't think is even on my channel anymore. Episode 1 was about Disneyland in general. It was just Disneyland. So if you guys have seen my recent video called Disneyland Walt's Impossible Dream, that video is a remake of a remake of a remake of a remake. And the original one was episode 1, I'm pretty sure, of my Disneyland History Today series. And that one was published well over 6 years ago. So that, I'm pretty sure, was the first episode. Evan Scott says, when are you seeing the Queen Mary, Alex? I have no idea. I don't think it's going to be this year. Daniel says, the locomotives will either be a Shea or a Heisler. Interesting. Chris says, have you ever gone to Disney World in Orlando? Yes, I went in the year 2006. And the only thing I liked about it was their Animal Kingdom park. Everything else I really hated. I didn't like Disney World at all. Kevin says, Walt Disney and Audiomatronics was uploaded August 2nd, 2017. Yeah, so that definitely wasn't the first video, because my first video was uploaded in August of 2016. So 2016 is when my first videos were uploaded. And keep in mind, not all my original videos are still on my channel. A lot of the videos that I made in 2016, 2017, all that, were removed from the channel. So, if you look on my channel, it says what day my channel was made, and it'll say like it was August something, August 16th, 2016 or something like that. I forget what day. But that day is when I posted my very first video. So I literally made this channel specifically for videos. Yeah, so 2016 was my first video. And then I started making videos about every 2 weeks after that. Doc says, Alex, when you were a tour guide, was it a specific attraction or did they send you all over? So it depends. Like when you start off as a Disneyland tour guide, you do specific tours. So the tours are usually themed. So it'd be like Walk in Walt's Footsteps, or it would be like... See, I was trained in Walk in Walt's Footsteps. That was my first tour I ever did. And then there was other tours, like, we had a horticulture tour. I don't think they do that anymore, but we had a horticulture tour. So we would talk about the different plants in Disneyland, where they came from. A lot of them have some pretty interesting backstories. So you would be very surprised. Like, some of the plants in Disneyland have some amazing backstories. Like, one plant in the Jungle Cruise in Adventureland was taken from the front of a woman's house. So, when they were building Disneyland in 1955, it just so happened that a lot of the Southern California freeways were being constructed around the same time. For those of you outside of the U.S., a freeway is a highway, a motorway. What else do you call a freeway? It's a highway without stops. You just go really fast. Anyway, so they were building a lot of Southern California's freeways, and in order to do that, they had to demolish streets and things like that. And so they were demolishing through a street down this one neighborhood, and the horticulture teams at Disneyland that were constructing Disneyland at the time, they said, we got a great idea. What if we go around Southern California to all these people that are about to lose, their front yards and backyards and whatever, and see if they'll give us the trees that are going to be demolished. So they did. And one of the houses they stopped at, there was this beautiful fig tree, really beautiful fig tree. And, or no, is it a fig tree or is it a banyan tree? I'm sorry, it's a banyan tree. It was a beautiful banyan tree. And they asked the lady, they were like, hey, I know, like, your home is not necessarily in the way of the construction. They go, but we would really like to, take this tree and we'll plant a smaller, nicer one in its place. We can't pay you for it, but we'll plant you a smaller tree in its place. And she said, oh, I don't know, this is my husband's property and he really likes that tree. And they said, look, they're like, we'll have it done before he gets home. She goes, well, if you can have it done before he gets home, then you can take the tree. So they literally dug the banyan tree out of her front yard, replaced it with a tiny little shrub tree, and they were done before the husband came home. And so that tree ended up in Adventureland, and it's still there today, and it's very large. It's a very large banyan tree, and it's right next to the hippo pool. And so, yeah, there's a lot of the plants in Disneyland, especially the ones taken in 1955, they have a backstory to them. And that was one of the coolest things. But yeah, so when we did themed tours, it was specifically about stuff like that. But I eventually had gained the experience and the training to do what are called VIP tours or VIP host. And basically what that is it's not as interesting as it might sound, but you essentially pay a minimum of 6 hours to have your own personal tour guide walk you around the park. You could ask them to do anything. They're kind of like your chauffeur for the day. They can get you, well, we used to do fast passes, but we could get you fast passes to rides. We could get you reservations to your favorite restaurants so you don't have to worry about that. We'll set up your table even so everything is the way you want it. And if you have questions about the history of the park or just how the park works or whatever like that, you could generally ask them. And so that's what I did because I was so knowledgeable about the park that I wanted to be a VIP host. And so I moved up from being a regular tour guide to being a VIP host. And all my personal VIPs were not celebrities. They were just like people with a lot of money, basically. But I did help out on days when celebrities came in because they needed multiple tour guides to kind of act like, personal security. And so I did assist with a few, like Justin Bieber came. I think that was also the last time he was there because he got kicked out at the end of the night. And so I was in the party with Justin Bieber. I was in a party with Whoopi Goldberg. I was in a party with a news anchor from Southern California called Sam Rubin. And who else? I don't remember who else. But I have met a lot of celebrities being in that department because part of the department also is working VIP locations, which means like if there's a show like the fireworks in Disneyland or World of Color Nighttime Spectacular in California Adventure, they have sections for VIPs to sit at, and so they have like nice little seats and they can watch the show. I worked those sections, and so I think the most celebrities I ever met all at once was when I worked the the World of Color VIP section. And you'd be there by yourself usually. So I was there by myself with the rope and a clipboard and everything. I knew who the people were. And I remember the first time I ever met Jerry Bruckheimer, the director of the Pirates of the Caribbean series. I didn't even know who he was. I didn't know who the director of Pirates of the Caribbean was. But apparently Jerry Bruckheimer is on my list. I'm like, that is a long name. And so this guy comes up with his whole entourage. He's got the little beard and everything, and he looks like a celebrity. And so he's like, hi, I'm supposed to report here so I can sit and watch the show. And I was like, okay, what's your name? And he looks at me and goes, Jerry. And I like look at him like, all right, can I have your last name? And he's like, Bruckheimer. And I was like, okay, Jerry Bruckheimer. I'm like looking, oh, there's your name. All right, I'll let you on in. So I let Jerry Bruckheimer in, and it was only until later that night I was talking to to my coworkers, I was like, you know, I think I had a celebrity on the list. I'm like, and his name was Jerry Bruckheimer. They're like, you don't know who Jerry Bruckheimer is? I'm like, I had no idea. So that was pretty funny. So, yeah, yes, most of the celebrities that we toured around and stuff were very nice people, but there was still quite a large portion of celebrities that I wouldn't want to tour around anymore. So that was my life being a tour guide at Disneyland. Wow, the chat really went. August 6, 2016. Ah, yeah, that's the that's the day I posted my very first video, and that video I don't think is on the channel anymore. I think I deleted it. I think I got in the middle of a conversation because I don't understand what. Okay, well, let's just continue on here. A-Class Production says, when Alex first started YouTubing, he looked like a robber from a 1990s Hollywood movie, especially with the black fedora-looking hat with the gray stripes. Yeah, well, so it wasn't a gray stripe, it was a black ribbon that went all the way around, and I have the replica of that hat. But the reason why I wore the fedora, and it was kind of funny, I've always liked fedoras, and I had a fedora for years at that point, and I used it whenever I went out, you know, traveling or whatever. But when I started my channel, and I called it Alex the Historian, and the first time I ever went on camera, I was kind of like, you know, it'd be kind of interesting if when I went on camera that I kind of had a look, like a signature look. And so I put the fedora on. I'm like, there you go, Alex the Historian. And so I did that, and that kind of became my look for many years. And that hat, the original fedora, it got very faded in sunlight, especially when I started going to do Disneyland vlogs. I started doing Disneyland vlogs in 2017. And that was the first time I'd ever been to Disneyland by myself, because I usually go with friends. But yeah, that hat got really faded really fast in the sunlight, and it was just horrible. That hat was, I had to throw it away. My friend Eric was like, my friend Eric is like my biggest fan, and he was like, let me keep your hat. I'm like, no, you don't want this hat. Like, I've worn this hat like multiple times every week, and you know, even if it was professionally clean so it didn't smell anymore, it looks terrible. It was turning like a light brown, even though it was supposed to be a black fedora, because it was just so sun bleached and stuff, and ugh, it was just gross. So yeah, and I replaced the hat in 2019, I think it was, maybe 2020, I forget, but I replaced the hat with an exact replica of it. And I have the replica hat here, and you've seen it in even my most recent video, the one called Forgetting You're at Sea. You can see me with the hat on there. So that's the replica hat. And it became kind of like my channel logo. That's why my channel logo has me with the hat on it. But yeah, fun times. Gosh, I'm like having all these memories now. All the way down memory lane we go. Rightopia says, what was the purpose of sheer, and why is it not used in modern ships anymore? So the main purpose of sheer on a ship, which is if you look at a ship from bow to stern, there's a dip towards the center, and so it goes up towards the ends. That's sheer. And then if you were to turn a ship so you're looking right at it, it has camber. Camber is a rise in the middle of the ship. So sheer and camber together create a stronger structure to the ship. Believe it or not, it really does. And it also, so it's done like that, so that way the ship can better withstand cresting over large swells on the ocean, because the swells will cause the ship to bend a little bit. So having an upwards bend will help the ship to prevent it from sagging too far down, and then the camber towards the center of the ship will prevent the length of the ship from bending upwards too much. And so it's actually kind of interesting how it works. Now, the reason why they don't do shear and camber anymore is because they've been able to even out the movement of a ship. So, in the past, ships were designed to try to plow through waves and ride up over them. That was the goal, was to ride up on top of the waves. But ocean liners today, like the Queen Mary 2, they're somewhat designed like that, but mainly they're designed to just plow right into the wave and like go right down into it. And so for that purpose, that makes them more level and more even. They don't need to crest swells quite the same way, as well as the fact that just other designs beyond my own comprehension make it so that ships today are much stronger and don't need the shear and camber. So that's my understanding of it today. Yeah. Daniel wants to know if I call my locomotives like she's or he's or anything like that. I do for ships, but not my locomotives, no. I don't. It's kind of weird. I know. I know, like some railroad enthusiasts will refer to their locomotives and stuff as like a she or whatever, but I only do that for ships. I don't really do that for locomotives. I usually refer to the locomotives by their name, and these ones don't officially have a name yet. I call this one Mr. Squeaky as a joke, but it's not the official name. Like, I would never name it Mr. Squeaky. But I do want to come up with a name someday for these two locomotives. I want, I'm the kind of person that names my locomotives really serious names. So, I don't know. But yeah. Doc says, why would they get rid of the horticulture tour? That stuff is fascinating. It was fascinating. They got rid of the horticulture tour. From my understanding, they got rid of it after I left the department. But I guess it just wasn't selling. I guess a lot of people just didn't understand like what to expect out of it. And even then, like when I would take people on the horticulture tour, I think I only did it maybe a total of 4 times. But when I took people on the horticulture tour, and I helped do I helped make the horticulture tour, believe it or not. I wasn't like one of the main people, but I helped contribute information to it. But yeah, so because I remember the lady who helped make it, and I was working with her, and we were talking about the different plants and stuff around Disneyland. We went around the park, and I was helping to write down all the information and stuff like that, and telling her information on the different plants and stuff. But yeah, it's just, when you go to Disneyland, the last thing you think of is, I want to learn about the plants, so that tour definitely didn't last. But it was fun. When people who went on the tour at the end, they were like, that was actually really interesting. Like, I didn't know all that stuff about the plants at Disneyland. So yeah. Again, Carter Asher, please, only questions that deal with the subject of the channel. Geschmake says an Autobahn. Yeah, an Autobahn is a name for a freeway in like Germany and stuff. So yeah, the Autobahn is definitely a way to call a freeway. Geschmake, I think you're thinking of Bill Evans. Fred Evans was Bill Evans' brother, but Bill Evans was the man in charge of the landscape architecture of Disneyland. But Fred was his older brother. And Fred owned the Evans nursery, but he wasn't the lead person in charge of landscaping at Disneyland. But funny little story is that Bill Evans, in his search to plant up the Jungle Cruise with a lot of exotic plants, would sneak seeds of exotic plants into his socks and bring them back to the United States. And he actually had discovered a plant called, well, he had discovered a plant that was previously not named. And later on, when scientists went to name it, they named it after him because he discovered it. So it's called Philodendron evansii, as in Bill Evans. Class A Production says, Legend says the husband is still looking for that tree. That's pretty funny. Hello, Matt. How's it going? Rail Enthusiast says, what cruise line is the worst of them all? I don't know. You'll have to ask people who are into cruise ships. If anybody knows what the worst cruise line is, let me know. Chris Surfass says, hey Alex, is there anything from Marceline, Missouri at Disneyland? Oh gosh. Off the top of my head, no. But funny enough, there was something from Disneyland that went to Marceline, Missouri. So, what year was it? 1957, I want to say. They installed the Midget Autopia. And then, just a year or two later, I want to say 1959, they got rid of Midget Autopia, and they didn't want to throw the ride system away, so what they did was they sent it over to Marceline, Missouri. Walt Disney sent it to Marceline, Missouri, and they set it up there, the Midget Autopia. And so Marceline, Missouri had a Midget Autopia from Disneyland that kids could ride. Pretty interesting. Matt C says, did you watch the Sea of Glass Titanic sinking live stream? No, I did watch the Titanic Honor and Glory real-time sinking live stream, but I only watched about an hour of that, and then I was kind of done. I don't really have much time for YouTube, to be honest. I'm just really busy with my own channel that I don't really get to watch much. Fun Edits is back. Hello, it's been a while. Chris says, hey Alex, did you know that Justin Bieber likes making life hard for restaurant workers with some of his stupid things that he's done? Oh, believe me, I know. When I was part of the team of tour guides that was touring him around, oh my God. See, he had asked his tour guide, because there was a lead tour guide there, and I was just the little helper who was supposed to just like kind of walk around with them. And I think there was maybe, I want to say 6 tour guides in total, and I was just one of them. But I was there at like the last minute. He had asked his tour guide if like everybody, like all his friends and stuff, can get like burgers for dinner. So they were like, okay, where do you want to go? And if I remember correctly, we went to the at the time it was called the Tomorrowland Terrace. And so the tour guide ended up telling us, like, okay, you guys, we're going to go with him and on rides and stuff, but when we get back, we need to have all the burgers ready. So here's a list of all the stuff you guys need to get. We're like, okay, cool, fine. So me and my coworker go, and we go and get all the burgers and everything. We collect a bunch of tables that are kind of like in the corner and away from most people, and we start setting everything up. We have like extra plates, napkins, like plasticware, stuff like that. We've set up cups of water. This is not something you get like just, when you go to Tomorrowland Terrace. It's a fast food joint. You grab your own food and that's it. But because we're the tour guides and we provide a really nice service, we set up everything as if it's like a restaurant. And so we went and did that, me and her. And then the entourage comes and they sit down and we are like, handing out all the burgers and stuff. And like Justin Bieber gets up and he's like, "What is this?" And the tour guide's like trying to tell him like, "Oh, this is the burger you wanted," or whatever. And he's like, "I don't like this burger." And he like throws it on the ground and all his friends are like laughing. And they're like, "Oh, we hate this. We don't want that. We want this and that," and blah, blah, blah. Like, and he was like just being really rude, and all his friends were laughing and they thought it was the funniest thing. And I was just like, my God. And thankfully soon after that, like I had a lead come by. They're like, "Okay, Alex, it's time for you to, to head home now. We'll take care of it from here and whatever." So I'm like, okay, great. And I was able to get out of there. But I was just like, my God, like, yeah. And he was, to my knowledge, he was banned from the park after that visit because, you see, from what I heard was that while they were gone, they were like standing up on rides like Pirates of the Caribbean, and they were being repeatedly told over the loudspeakers to sit down. But I guess they just had enough of it at the end of the night that they just banned him outright from the park. And so, yeah, to my knowledge, he's never been back to Disneyland since because of his ban. So crazy. Yeah, so Doc says, "Sorry to ask this Disney thing, but did you go to a special academy like the Disney College program? Did they train you in the history part?" No. So Disney College program is not Disney training. Disney College program is you're going to college already, but if you need a job, you can do college through the Disney program and get a job at Disneyland. So it's not what people think. It's not like you're going to college to learn Disney stuff. But no, I was not in the Disney College program. I had started work long before I even went to college. But so how I learned Disney stuff was I was a really big Disneyland fan since I was a little kid. I was 10 years old. The year was 2002. And I had just learned a lot about Disneyland history and all that, and I was a big fan. And by the time I turned 17, and my dad was like, "Okay, you need to get a job. Like, it's time for you to go out and work." And he was probably thinking, like, I'd get a job at McDonald's or something. No, I was like, I'm going to get a job at Disneyland. And my dad's like, "Come on." He's like, it's going to be really hard. Like, they only hire certain amounts of people and blah, blah. But I was like, no, they'll hire me because I know a lot about Disneyland. And so they hired me. Not because of my Disneyland knowledge, but at the time I thought it was. But, yeah, I worked as a busboy for a couple of years before I moved up into the guest relations department to do tour guides and stuff like that. So, yeah, no, Disney did not teach me anything. And the thing that you should know about tour guides at Disneyland is they are not taught Disney history at all. You are brought into the department based off of your knowledge already. So you have to know. So when I was getting into the tour guide department, it was really difficult. They only hire like one or two people every couple of months, maybe even a year or so. So, but I went there and I did all these interviews. I was interviewed like 4 times. And each time I had to prove my knowledge of the park. They had basics, they knew what to ask you. When was the park built? Who built it? When was Pirates of the Caribbean built? Why was it built? Who designed it? Things like that. So just some basic questions that told them how much knowledge you really had and stuff like that. And then they would say, "Tell us your favorite fun facts about Disneyland." So I'd sit there and explain a whole bunch of stuff and, try to impress them with whatever knowledge I had. And they were like, "Great, love it," And so they brought me into the department, and that was really neat. The only thing you could possibly learn from being in guest relations is maybe the tours teach you something new. So you do a tour, like when I did the horticulture tour, even though I helped make the horticulture tour, there was still a lot of stuff that I didn't know about it that other people contributed to the tour, and I learned a lot of stuff, you know, like about different mosses and things in the park. Kind of weird. So there were some things I learned through being a tour guide, but not much. I already knew a lot of the stuff. But the thing is that the reason why I mention this is because a lot of tour guides at Disneyland, they learn information off the internet just like everybody else. So sometimes the information they learn is actually false. You know, I had, years after I left the tour department, I was actually visiting the park one day. I was talking to a tour guide, and she was, well, I wasn't taking a tour. Technically, she wasn't a tour guide that day. She was just information booth. But nevertheless, she was in the department. And she was talking about how she said, did you know that the dinosaurs in the primeval world part of the Disneyland Railroad came from the molds made by Ellen's Universe of Energy in Epcot? And I looked at her and I was like, sure, okay. Like, I'm not the kind of person that corrects people. Like, I don't just go like, actually, that's wrong. But I should have. But she was just, so she told me that. I'm like, okay, all right. And like, I walked away. And I told my friend Chris, I'm like, that is not true. I was like, I don't know where she got that, but it was totally not true. Like, at all. The Ellen's Universe of Energy was made in like the 1990s, and you know, the Primeval World segment of the Disneyland Railroad was built at Disneyland in 1966, but it came from the 1964 New York World's Fair. So I'm like, I don't know where she got that information, but it's completely false. But that's just the thing, is when you take a tour at Disneyland, you'd think that they're all taught Disney history, but they're not. They have to already know stuff, and usually the way that they learn stuff is through the internet. So that's kind of how it is. But I heard rumor that in the early days when Walt and his people started the department, they used to be taught Disney history. They were, because they had to be able to teach people things about the park. So it's not like that anymore, unfortunately. Sorry, I know that was a bit of a rant. I kind of do that at times. Lachlan says, since the Queen Mary is being repaired, will the plywood on the stern be replaced where the promenade ends on the exterior? I don't know. They haven't specifically mentioned that. So I know that they are going to be doing a lot of teakwood plank repairs and replacements around the ship, but they did not specifically say that area, so I don't want to assume that they are, but I hope they do. I hope they do. Also, do you know what is happening in the main lounge? Yes, right now in the main lounge, they are sanding down the wood veneers. They're removing the varnish and the old wood stain off of the veneers and restaining them, because they have faded over the years and they've darkened and become cloudy. So the wood veneer doesn't stand out that well. So they are actually in the process of doing that right now. And I heard it's going to happen to the whole room, basically. So, and they will be repairing the light fixtures in that room as well. I don't know how many of them or which way that they're doing it, but, you know, stuff like that. Matt says, have you seen Tom Linsky's Lusitania ship model? If you mean the game that he's developing, I've seen the trailer for it, but I don't know that they completed it. Did they complete it already? Because I didn't see any advertisement for it. Rail enthusiast, I don't know about whether the Olympic-class ships would have saved the company. I don't know. I'm the wrong person to ask about Olympic-class ships. Alright. I gotta catch up with all these comments. Top impressive line. I don't have currently any plans about those specific ships. If they cross my path and I think it's an interesting story to tell, I might, but I don't expect too many like straight up history videos about the entire history of ships. Every time I come up with one, somebody posts a video that's very similar, and then I just feel like I wasted all my time. So what I do instead is I try to talk about subject matters of ocean liners that maybe other people haven't discussed yet. So that's kind of what I do, and on occasion I make a history video about the history of a ship or a liner. Let's see. There's something about Majestic. So, yeah, I didn't know Majestic 2 was the largest ship in the world. For 21 years, that is. Lachlan says, my favorite room on the Queen Mary is the first class main lounge. The fireplace, the packetry? Flooring? The flooring. It's not... Oh, parquet. Parquet, okay. I was like, what is a packet? Yeah, the parquet flooring, the nice carpets, furniture, lounge chairs, lighting. The lights are amazing. Yeah, the first class main lounge on the Queen Mary was a fantastic room. I'd love to see it restored to that look again. Alex, the Seaside of Bulgaria, says, which is the largest room on the Queen Mary? Do you know its size? On which deck is it located? The largest room on the Queen Mary is the first class main dining room, which I don't know what it's called today. I think it's called the... No, I don't know. I don't want to bother with it. It was the first class main restaurant, and it's located on our deck on the Queen Mary, and it is 118 feet wide, which is the full width of the ship, and it is approximately 145 feet long, and it stands about 3 decks high. The amount of volume that it contains could contain the volume of all 3 of Christopher Columbus's sailing ships, plus the volume of the RMS Britannia. So those 4 ships, their volume could fit in that room. That's how big the room is. It was also larger by volume than the first class restaurant on the SS Normandy, which a lot of people consider the largest restaurant on any ocean liner, but it really wasn't. The Queen Mary's was. So yeah, it was a huge room. And that room also inspired, not directly, but somewhat indirectly, inspired the design of the main ballroom in the movie The Shining. Let's see. Matt C says, what would you say or ask Walt Disney if you could have met him? I've thought about that for years, and I've never come up with an answer for it, to be totally honest. I still can't. I don't know what I would say to him. But interesting enough, I had only one and only one dream with Walt Disney in it. And this happened years after I left the tour department. But I had a dream that I was still a tour guide, and I was going to meet a VIP at the front entrance of Disneyland. Next thing I know, they wheel in a very elderly Walt Disney in a wheelchair. And the people, his entourage, tell me, "Oh, this is Walt Disney. You know, we brought him out of his retirement home, and he wants to see Disneyland one more time before he dies." So I was like, "Oh, okay, I get to be his tour guide for the day." So I just remember the dream going, you know, it's kind of a funny dream, but it's probably one of the best dreams I ever had. It was like my mind was trying to help satisfy, you know, this part of me that just never got satisfied. But basically, I was touring Walt Disney through the park, and it was a very long dream too, so I'm very happy about that. But I was touring Walt Disney through the park, and he and I were talking about the differences between the last time he was there, which was the 1960s, and being there today. And I was kind of telling him about the differences, what's changed, what's new, what's still around. And I just remember the dream being very, very pleasant, just kind of discussing the differences and stuff like that in the park. So that was a very good dream. I thank my subconscious for giving me that dream. That was a very pleasant dream. But no, I don't know what I would ask him. I honestly don't know. Daniel says, would you consider either the Mauretania or the Aquitania as figuratively the RMS Olympic? I don't even know what that means. I'm sorry. Doc says, thank you for such thoughtful answer to our questions. I'm really in awe that you weren't in some 6 to 8 week long academy for tour guides. Seems wild. They just lucked out with you. Yeah, you know, that's why, like, I think that's one of the reasons why I also started my Disneyland history series. The whole reason why I started my channel was because, you know, not only just to get my mind off of life at the time, but it was because there's a lot of information that tour guides say at Disneyland, and it's not true. It's not their fault. They do the research. It's just that there's a lot of misinformation on the internet, and it gets repeated over and over and over and over again. And the tour guides fall victim to that. They go and they research something so that way they could teach their guests something new, and then they end up stumbling across the false information, and they think it's true, and then they repeat it. And then what happens is, then those people go home, and they go, oh, well, the tour guide said that this is this, so it must be true because it came from a Disneyland tour guide. So I started my channel because I was like, people need to know the actual truth about the park without all this fake information coming in, because it's easy to be fooled by what information is true, what information isn't. Like, one of the famous stories that tour guides tell is that, you know, when they were testing Matterhorn Mountain for the first time, that Walt Disney was walking by, he wanted to try it out, but they hadn't finished the very last part of the section of the track, so they had set up a bunch of bales of hay for the roller coaster vehicles to crash into. And so, according to the story, Walt Disney got on Matterhorn, and then he rode it all the way down, and when the vehicle crashed into the bale of hay at the very end, Walt Disney proclaimed, that was really fun, you guys need to include something like that with the final ride. Thus, they installed the splashdown ponds at the bottom of the ride. That's not true. That story is retold so many times. And actually, it's not based off of Walt Disney riding the bobsled. It was based off of Imagineer Vic Green. Vic Green was the man who was in charge of the entire Matterhorn project. And he was there on testing day. Indeed, the end of the ride was not quite finished, and they had set up piles of hay, loose hay everywhere. And he got to the bottom and crashed into the hay, and it gave him near whiplash. You know, Imagineer Bob Gurr said that, you know, they were concerned they would have had to take Vic to the hospital because he just came to a quick stop in the hay. And, you know, and so, you know, Vic just said, let's just make sure the final product isn't like that. And so they created the splashdown, but it was not Walt Disney who did it. You know, Walt Disney was a very elderly man, and he would not have gone on the ride until they had all the safety systems installed, because, again, he was a very elderly man with a permanent polo injury to his back. He wouldn't have gone on that ride unless it was completed. So, yeah, that's one of those stories that it was Imagineer Vic Green, but everybody calls it Walt Disney's, you know. So, it's one of those things. So, Lachlan says, I saw a clip of a tour guide at the Queen Mary on YouTube, and a person asked the tour guide what happened to the Queen Elizabeth, and he said that they didn't know what happened to the Queen Elizabeth. Yeah, that's just a tour guide that just didn't know, I guess. Hello, Malibu Company. Oh, interesting. Eric says, I hope they don't sand the veneer. It's so thin that after only a couple of restorations, they will sand right through it. I think they may have sanded in 1970, but I hope they have better ways to do it. I don't think they did do any sanding in 1970. The veneers have been sanded only once in their history, to my knowledge, and that was after the war. I'm trying to think, like, when. I think it was some rooms received sanding in 1947. But then there were rooms like the main lounge. Like, I'm not worried about them sanding it, and the reason why is because in the early 60s, according to a story told by Ralph Rushton, a former crew of the Queen Mary, they had a piano that broke loose during a storm, and it smashed all the wood veneers and furniture in the entire room. The wood veneers had to be replaced over the course of a week. And so technically the wood veneers in the main lounge date back to the mid-1960s and not the 1930s. So I don't think they had been sanded down since they were installed. And so those I'm not really worried too much about. But the other wood veneers around the ship, I don't think they've only been sanded once in their entire history. So I don't foresee there being a problem if they do it multiple times. But this time, if they apply modern clear coats, what do you call them? Not lacquer, varnish. If they apply modern varnishes to them, those varnishes are designed not to yellow. So as long as they don't yellow and get cloudy, you won't need to sand them down in the future. Just polish them. So, yeah, so that's kind of the cool thing. If they use modern materials, they won't need to ever sand them again, technically. So, let's see. Matt says, thank you for sharing that dream, Alex. You're welcome. It was such a nice dream. Geshmak says, this might be very off-topic. Please forgive me. Was the restroom where you experienced potential paranormal activity at the Disneyland Hotel near Steakhouse 55? No. So it was beneath what is now the Fantasy Tower of the Disneyland Hotel. There is a basement there, and that's where they had guest restrooms way back when. Now today that area is blocked off. Guests cannot go down there in the Fantasy Tower. But that restroom down there was the one where I experienced the haunting. Now, my friend was in the Frontier Tower about a year ago. He was doing a tour. So, Chris, if you go to LMG Vid's YouTube channel, he did a walkthrough of the Disneyland Hotel. He went to the basement restrooms of the Frontier Tower, and he stopped at the bottom of the stairs because he suddenly felt this feeling like, do not come down here kind of feeling. Like, it scared him. And he ended up going back up the stairs. And he came home and he was telling me on the phone, he was like, by the way, is the restrooms in the Frontier Tower haunted? And I was like, oh yeah. I was like, all of them are. But I'm like, but yeah, that one has some pretty particular stories to it. And he was like, dude, he's like, I was going down those stairs. And he's like, and all of a sudden, like, he just felt something like, just this sense, like, of dread, like, don't come down here kind of thing. And he walked right back up. And he had it on video that he did that, you know. But yeah, it was kind of funny, and I was like, yeah, those restrooms there are haunted too. But yeah, in my story, it was the Frontier, it was the Fantasy Tower restrooms. But back then, it wasn't Fantasy Tower. Back then, it was like, oh, I don't remember if it was Sierra Tower. It had a different name back then, but yeah. Tupia, everyone suggests I play Britannic Patroness of the Mediterranean, but I'm not going to do it. I don't want to play that game. Louis Wright. I've never been interested in making Revell models or Airfix models. I have a mini-craft model of the Titanic that I built back in 2012. And I promised myself a few years back that I would never make another ocean liner model again unless it was of the Queen Mary. Because I really want a Queen Mary model. The only thing is I don't like the current Queen Mary models that you can buy. They're very poorly made. So if someone ever comes up with a kit for a Queen Mary model that is more accurate and is newer, then I will build it. But other than that, I don't like building ocean liner models. They're very tedious. Daniel, I don't know what would happen to the railroads or locomotives. They probably would be sold. Uh-oh. I think I'm running over on time. I have to go, people, because I am running out of time. I was supposed to be done with this live stream like 30 minutes ago. Alright, folks. Thank you all for watching. I might do some kind of live stream on Sunday. It may not necessarily be a tea time live stream, but it may just be a live stream in general. Again, I'm moving, so everything has to be packed up. And I don't know if on that day I will have my tea stuff out for use. So, anyway, folks, I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.